Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board meeting of the Village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, July 6th. So if you are watching today, Monday, July 6th, we invite you to call in at any time if you have any comments about our discussions. The call-in number is 769-1677. Welcome to all of you who may be watching through Cablevision, but also through our new webcast option, which is available on the web at pctv76.org. So be reminded that if you are not near TV with cable TV service, you can always watch Village Board meetings live at pctv76.org, both live, and it is then archived for viewing on demand thereafter. So great new resource not only to watch Village Board meetings, but also a lot of other content on that website. So we encourage you to do it. Our next regular meeting is on July 20th. That's 2 weeks from today. Our regular meeting schedule has been shifted around a little bit to accommodate summer schedules, so we have 2 meetings in the month of July today and 2 weeks from today, which is the 20th. We have a number of updates to make, but want to clear the agenda here for a presentation we have by Tom Daniels, Chair of our Conservation Advisory Committee. But one thing I do want to say at the outset is that we are in Pleasantville Music Festival week. This Saturday, July 11, is the 5th annual Pleasantville Music Festival down at Farrows Field on Marble Avenue. Music starts, the gates open at 11, music starts at noon, it goes on to 8 at night, and we have a great array of bands on several different stages. We have food vendors, we have merchandise vendors, a kids area, MacArthur's beer garden with beer from Captain Lawrence and from Prospero, both Pleasantville businesses. So a great day, and we encourage you to come. Saturday, July 11th, 5th Annual Pleasantville Music Festival.
So we have a Fifth Avenue? Wow.
Yeah. Marble Avenue has been renamed Fifth Avenue. It's just down the street from Saks. So we have started a program of having presentations by our department heads and also by boards and committees, both to make sure that the Village Board is aware of what's going on and we have a good opportunity to exchange ideas, but also so the community is aware of what these various groups do and what their interests and concerns are at a given moment. We had a work session last Monday with the entire membership of the Conservation Advisory Committee and have asked Tom Daniels, its chair, to come back tonight to give us a brief review of that on TV for the benefit of the community at large. So thank you, Tom. Welcome. We appreciate your coming back.
I'm in the way.
Thank you very much for, again, the opportunity to talk to you tonight about some of the interests of the Conservation Advisory Council and some of the priorities that we have for this year and for the coming year. If you don't mind, I'm just going to go through a brief PowerPoint presentation and be happy to answer questions at the end. The Conservation Advisory Council, as you know, is a volunteer group. Currently, we've got 9 members. We're always looking for new members. We've had some turnover in the past years, but we have a very good group of people right now, and they have helped tailor the list of priorities that I want to talk to you about tonight. Let me just start off by explaining to the residents exactly what the CAC does. It's our mission to provide the Village Board and the residents with a scientific perspective on land use proposals, environmental ordinances, and conservation issues in the village. We strive to identify, monitor, and help preserve our natural resources with the understanding that a conservation ethic can better the quality of life in the village. Our efforts include evaluating the state of our natural resources, assisting individuals and public or private groups working to improve and protect those resources, disseminating accurate conservation information to residents, and serving as a liaison with other groups and communities having similar goals. We seek to foster responsibility for the environment on which we all depend. And so we've got a fairly broad mandate, and our job really is to try and cover the bases as far as environmental issues in the village, and where appropriate, make some recommendations to the board regarding what we feel are conservation goals that we should all be striving for. And so I just briefly listed the issues for 2009 that we feel are important, and I'm going to go through each, but I just want to give you an overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about environmental ordinances, about Nanahagan Park, recycling, greening, not just construction aspects of greening, but also certain events, trees and power lines, and environmental resources. These are all things that we feel people in the village are interested in, and the CAC feels needs some attention at the moment. First, environmental ordinances. When we talk about these ordinances, we're talking about laws to protect wetlands, open space, steep slopes, trees, stormwater management, conservation development, parkland, reservation, and leaf blower ordinance as well. We feel that's to some extent a conservation issue. We talk about noise pollution. What do we need to do regarding these ordinances? Well, we want to first, the CAC is currently reviewing the local ordinances, and we're going to determine what the standards are for these ordinances, not just in the local villages, but in as many communities as we can, to see what it is that other people consider the standard and what should we be striving for as a community. Once we have that in mind, we're going to develop model ordinances for the village, not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but determining whether or not our statute is either up to snuff or not, and in some cases where we don't have a statute, to add a statute to protect a particular resource. And then one of the things we're also going to address as we do this overview is, or the survey, is whether or not, and it might be appropriate to have an environmental officer, someone particularly in the village who's in charge of looking at compliance for the various environmental ordinances that we will have on the books. And so we did a brief survey very quickly just to look and see whether or not where we stand in some respects. We do have a wetlands ordinance. It was put on the books in 1987. At the moment, we feel that there's room for improvement in that ordinance. We don't have an open space or a steep slope ordinance, and those are things that we think we should consider as a village. We do have a tree ordinance. It was implemented in 1994, but it applies only to street trees, and we as a village need to determine whether or not we want to have a more restrictive tree ordinance as well. We do have laws in place for erosion and sediment control and recycling, and parkland reservations as well. Whether or not those are currently meeting the standard is something we have to decide, and that's why we have a question mark up there. We do have a leaf blower ordinance, believe it or not, but and again, it's to control noise pollution, but it dictates when you can and can't use leaf blowers in the course of a given day. It does not have a seasonal component, and we think that's something that we might want to look at in the future. Nanahagan Park. It's, we feel, one of the nicest places in the village in terms of open space, in terms of just aesthetics, and we feel very strongly that people in the village need to be made a little bit more aware of the possibilities of it being a sanctuary of sorts, where they can go and look at wildlife and look at vegetation, and in general have a nice day. I mean, you can walk in there any time of in the spring or summer, and this is sort of the view that you're greeted with, and it's astounding in my view. I was there the other day, and we found some turtles. We've got a pretty good. Yeah, this is a snapping turtle. We've got a fairly healthy population of those in the park, and this was a little guy just sitting there. It looks like almost looks like a plastic animal when you approach it, but they're doing very well. And I put this aerial view up just to give some perspective to residents in the village as to where the park is. If you look, and I believe today I'm prepared here with this is the southern tip of Nanahagan Pond, and you can see here this is the aqueduct that is adjacent to the park, property of the cottage school. And if you look, this is a clearing that was developed about 10 years ago when the pond was first dredged, and all of the dredge material that was taken out of the pond was put up here. And ultimately this was covered over, but it links to the rest of the park through a wooded trail that's about 1,200 feet long and is really a very, very nice walk. Not many people take advantage of that, and we think that's something that we may be able to modify a bit if we make the trail a little bit more accessible and a little more friendly as far as residents are concerned. Well, we've been interested in the park for a long time, and some of the things we've done since the dredging took place was we've advised on the lake path construction and the cleanup. We had a planning effort up on that clear area back in 2002. Some things took, some didn't. It's not necessarily the best place. As you know, it's been capped. with a geotextile membrane and then covered with dirt. Trees don't grow on there, but a variety of small shrubs do, and we need to keep an eye on what does and doesn't grow. There are some invasives up there now, like Japanese barberry, that unfortunately does very well in disturbed soils, and we might consider doing something else as far as trying to replant some native plants up there. Back in 2003, the trail that we're talking about was actually part of an Eagle Scout project by Andrew Whalen, who successfully completed the goals of his Eagle Scout project. We had a cleanup of the trail and the meadow up on that clear area back in 2005 and 2007, and we had a second Eagle Scout project that took place in 2006. And so again, we've been relatively interested in trying to get some things done in Nanahagan Park. I have 4 pictures here. The upper left is what the Eagle Scout project trail looked like in 2003. Below that is a slightly improved version back in 2006. And on the right is a 2007 photo, and you can see that the trail started to deteriorate over time. And this is part and parcel of being in a sanctuary, being in an area that you want to maintain as relatively undisturbed. Things happen, nature happens, wood chips decay, and so keeping a nice trail in the park is going to require an ongoing effort on the part of the village. And you see in the upper right, that meadow, that clear area that we're talking about, occasionally gets visited by people who aren't particularly interested in keeping the place clean, and that's one of the reasons we've had cleanups up there before. And so those are things that we'll have to watch out for in the future. The current status of the trail, there's been a large volume of wood chips added, and it's had the effect of damming some of the water that used to cross the trail. And so right now access to the meadow is limited. We also have some problems with ATVs that are coming off-site and leaving ruts and so on in the park. And that's something that we'll have to address as time goes on. But clearly right now further trail work is needed. This is a picture of the trail back in April, and you can see the wood chip, where the wood chips end. We've got a fairly extensive wetland area that has developed in front of that. And if we're going to really make this trail, and you can see that the trail goes off into the woods quite a bit. If we're going to make this trail accessible to residents, we are going to have to do some more remediation. This is a picture that was just taken last month, and you can see how a lot of that area is still very, very wet, and we've actually got some wetland plants growing in the trail. That's something we have to work on in terms of water flow. What do we think is necessary? Well, if we want to make the sanctuary portion interesting and accessible, we're going to have to work further on the trail. We'll have to remediate some of those wet areas. We plan on making something of a nature trail, highlights along the trail that people will find interesting, sort of as a goal that people can have as they're walking the trail. Add bluebird and bat houses. That's something that is very amenable to a volunteer effort and something we hope to do down the road. We need to monitor invasives. We do have some in the park, and we think that one of the ways of building a program that will be a long-term program where people can sort of monitor what's going on in the park and do work as needed would be to develop a group, something we might call it the Friends of Nanahagan Park, or some volunteer group that would sort of take this the park under its wing and do what it can to make sure that the park is developed and reasonably maintained. You may see this at part of the times of the year. This is one of the invasives we talked about, purple loosestrife. One of the things we found out over time is that once invasives get into an area, it's very, very difficult to get rid of them. And so we're not only interested in monitoring what's there, but trying to pick up very, very early what newcomers are in there, and if necessary, get rid of them. Another priority of the CAC is recycling. And we've heard a lot of about recycling, and I don't want to spend much time on it. We think a couple of things can be done right now to improve the recycling effort in the village. We often go to events and we find that recyclable materials are in the garbage. And it might only be 10 feet away from a recycling bin. It's just that some someone didn't take the effort to walk that 10 feet. And we think it may help if we put recycling bins closer to trash receptacles, maybe, and there are receptacles that are designed like that so that all three go out at once, one for glass, one for paper, and one for trash itself. We think a better a service to the village would be to keep the recycling center open longer than it is currently, and I know that's something that you're considering. We talk about greening the future. We're not talking strictly about construction. That's where most of the effort, most of the education effort has gone into lately. We know that we should be using recyclable materials when we build. We know that we should be using ENERGY STAR approved appliances. We know that we should be using lots of insulation in the attic and so on. These are all things that are going to cut down on energy use and ultimately help the planet. We think events that are offered in the village could also be greened in a sense. And so we talked about recycling bins adjacent to trash receptacles. Whenever we have lots of people in an event, it might be Pleasantville Day, it might be the upcoming music festival. It might be worthwhile to make sure that people have opportunities to recycle materials. Water on site, watering stations to reduce the use of plastic bottles we think would be a good idea. In printing and advertising, 100% recycled paper, two-sided printing, soy-based inks, these are all things that are relatively environmentally friendly and probably would help reduce our carbon footprint. Selling T-shirts, hats, and merchandise that are made of sustainable materials would be one way to go. Selling organic, veggie, and vegan foods. Having shuttles, moving people from one place to another. We do now, but if we could get away from gas-powered motor and perhaps get something that's running on biodiesel or vegetable oil, that would help. And then we should also consider perhaps giving people the opportunity to donate money toward offsetting the event's carbon footprint. There are a number of sites that invest now in technologies that are more friendly to the environment. And one of the ways people can actually help the planet is by donating to those groups, and they, in a sense, further the use of technology with that money. Trees and power lines have been a bit of a sore point for a number of residents we've heard about a number of times. We still have problems with Con Ed in terms of how they notify people, residents, about tree pruning and the removal of trees. We think that that's something that's it's an ongoing concern, and I know the village is working to the best of its ability to get Con Ed to sort of come into compliance, but a greater effort on their part is needed, we think, to minimize damage they do to street trees and those on private property. And so we're looking forward to Con Ed perhaps taking a little bit more of a proactive role instead of simply reacting to people who are complaining about the job that they're doing. Trees are very, very important to conservation efforts everywhere, and that's certainly the case in Pleasantville as well. Environmental resources. We want the village to think of the Conservation Advisory Council as an environmental resource. We think a greater effort could be made in establishing a website that people will visit for conservation information. The CAC recently got its own email address, and we invite everybody who has any comment or question about the CAC's activities or some complaint perhaps about an environmental issue they think we need to address, to write to us at pleasantvillecac@gmail.com. We're happy to field any and all questions from residents. There are such things as meetings called conservation cafes. Very, very instructive, very informative. They tend to be geared toward village administrators, and we think that having those notices go out and published on websites would also be a benefit to the residents. And again, as I mentioned, the CAC is here to do what it can to further conservation issues, as well as serve as in an advisory role to the village. And that's sort of our overview. I'm happy to take any questions. I don't want to stay on too long, but I do appreciate, again, the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you. It's good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Daniels?
Tom. As I mentioned, this was a presentation that we saw a week ago in work session and had an extended discussion. And I thank you for coming back as
My pleasure.
and thank you and the rest of your group on the advisory council for the great work you guys do. And I think that it was clear from the discussion we had last week and from the points you've raised this week that there are lots of opportunities to knit what the Conservation Advisory Council does more into the business of the other boards and commissions as well as the business of the village board. And so we've taken that list of issues that you have given us here in the PowerPoint and sort of tacked it up for our consideration, and we'll be working with you to identify priorities. Certainly one of them that has come to us from some other sources as well is whether or not there ought to be some kinds of controls on gas-powered leaf blowers. And so that's a subject that we'll be talking about and looking at what some other communities have done, and I know there are strong feelings on that subject on both sides. So we'll be interested in comments from the public as well as the evidence we get from other communities that have grappled with this issue. So that's what's on the radar screen right now, and as is Nanahagan Park.
We appreciate that. We know that a lot of the recommendations, well, some of the recommendations may be more feasible than others, and certainly in overseeing the activities of the village, the board has to consider pros and cons on both sides. We're pro-environment, obviously, but some things may be more doable than others. Some things may be more doable in the short term. Some things may take a greater effort in a longer period of time. We certainly appreciate that, but we're happy to.
Well, and then as you know, you were here, I think, the night that we kicked it off, but for those who may not have seen it, a group of residents from Orchard Street came, the Turner family and the Collins family, and they're going to be leading an effort with assistance from you guys, wherever you wish to plug into it, to take a look at our current recycling center, the hours, the location, the kinds of things that we receive, and compare it also to what some other communities do to sort of get some benchmarks out there about what might be possible, to see what's realistic for us to do that might expand our recycling operation either now or in the future. So after we met with you last week, Patty hustled back, and I think we now have a better recycling operation planned for this weekend at the music festival.
That's great.
And you guys have a booth.
We do. We're sharing a booth with the Green Peeville Group, who's been a remarkable sort of influence in terms of enthusiasm and helping the support the work of the CAC. We appreciate their efforts as well.
Okay, well that's great. If anyone has any comments, they're welcome to call in 769-1677. But failing that, thank you, sir, and we will be talking to you a lot in the coming year.
Great. Thanks very much again. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Did anyone have any announcements they want to make? Farm Market is up and running every Saturday morning in Memorial Plaza and has been, I think, a great success so far.
I unfortunately haven't been yet, I'm embarrassed to say. Swim meet, swim duties.
When the season is over, you'll be back.
Yes.
Actually, you have something to do with the swim team, Mindy?
Yeah.
Really?
So I have a list of updates I wanted to report on, and the first is that last week I went to the New York Conference of Mayors meeting in Saratoga Springs and came back with a number of interesting things, but one thing I want to pass on to the community is that there was a brief address by the governor and then an address by the state controller, Tom DiNapoli, and both parties decried, as do I, and I dare say all of us, the absurd circumstances that exist in Albany at the moment with the legislature essentially shut down for political squabble. But amid that, the state controller gave a fairly grim outline of the state's financial condition and reported, among other things, that the net revenues for the state in the month of May were 35% below budget, and that if the results for June end up similarly, it may be possible or necessary for the state legislature, if it can ever find a way to meet again, to go back into session and cut the current fiscal year budget, not next year's fiscal budget, but the current fiscal year's budget, in order to reflect the reduced income that has appeared. So the other dark cloud on the horizon, which is one we've mentioned in the past, is that the state pension fund investments, which are the monies that fund pensions for retired staff people in municipalities, states, towns, cities, and villages, has suffered a decline in investment income, just like all investments have, of something on the order, I think it's reduced in value by something like 25%. Not a terrible result in comparison to some other benchmarks, but nonetheless, what's expected as a result of that is that we are required to pay a percentage of our payroll into the state pension fund every year, and we expect, without having the numbers yet, and we won't know them until the fall, that the increase in the contribution we make to that fund may be somewhere in the vicinity of 4 to 5% higher than it is right now. That is 4 to 5% of payroll, not a 4 to 5% increase in the overall contribution. So it's a potential dark cloud that could amount to $400 and some thousand of expense to the village next year, and so that's something that is clearly coming at some level. We don't know how serious the hit will be, but the state controller will be setting those contribution rates next fall. There's an elaborate system by which the legislature is considering a mechanism to allow communities to amortize that expense over a period of years, in essence rolling out the expense by paying more for it in the future, and that's a matter that we'll have to discuss at the time. The last time we were confronted with such a circumstance, the village decided to fund the total cost up front as it was required to and avoid the interest cost down the road, but that'll be a discussion to be had. So certainly the conditions in Albany are not all that encouraging, either from a political front or from a financial front, but I am happy to report that this board and the boards that have preceded it have, I think, been quite fiscally responsible, and we have a substantial fund balance, and although nobody's happy about the trouble we are confronting now and may confront in the future, I think we're in a pretty good place to deal with what comes our way. So we also had, there was a meeting last Monday as part of our effort to improve emergency planning in the village with all of the people who are a part of our emergency plan. In the event that something were to strike the village, a hurricane, a natural disaster, or whatever, we rely obviously upon our first responders, police and volunteer fire, and the Pleasantville Volunteer Ambulance Corps, but also upon a range of other services, including our village services in DPW and in Village Hall and administration, but also assistance from schools and churches and community groups, and there are a whole list of them that are included in our annually issued emergency plan. Places where school kids could be sheltered for a period of time if necessary, places where people could go in the event that there was some sort of catastrophic problem, flooding, etc. So we're looking to sharpen up that planning a little bit and to make sure that everybody who might be involved knows what their responsibilities would be, and as a result of that, the police chief set up a meeting last Monday with all the people that were on that list, and I think I'm right, Patty, that everybody attended, which was a great result, and we appreciate that. So he went through the whole list of what-ifs that the plan anticipates and described to people what they might be asked to do, and made sure we have up-to-date phone numbers and cell phone numbers and emails and all of that. So it's just part of a process that will be ongoing over the next few months for us to sharpen up our emergency planning and hopefully be prepared for something we never have to address. Jonathan and I and Patty Dwyer met with Verizon last Wednesday in our ongoing FiOS cable TV negotiation. A long struggle to get them back to the table, but they finally appeared. Obviously, it's a confidential negotiation, and we're under certain constraints to keep some information confidential. I guess the best we could say, Jonathan, would be that it was good that they came back. There was some movement in some areas that was positive, and also some retreat in some areas that was negative. So we made a couple of points rather strongly. We're waiting, hopefully, for a prompt response about whether we can see some movement in those areas. But it's an ongoing effort, and one that we're working very hard on, very focused on. We've made very clear to Verizon that it's of paramount interest in the village to have a competitive cable TV offering here in our town, but we want it to be done just as they ask it to be done, on a level playing field. Also wanted to mention, some of you may have heard some discussions in the past, we're entering into an easement agreement with Metro North. Turns out that the electrical system for the tracks was designed at a time that there were fewer trains being run. They're now in a circumstance where they need to add electrical power at something like 17 locations along the Upper Harlem line, Pleasantville being one of them, because when you have too many trains operating close together, you need higher power in order to keep them running. So They are going to be adding a number of things on their track side that won't affect us, but the piece that does affect us is that they need to add some small electrical substation boxes, and for a whole series of technical reasons, the logical place to put them is in our parking lot on Manville Road, opposite Wheeler Avenue. That's the one behind the bookstore. So they came forward with a proposal to take the 2 parking spaces that are closest to the train tracks and closest to Manville Road for a concrete pad that would accommodate these 2 electrical boxes, and in exchange for that, they will relocate the dumpster enclosure that's currently behind MacArthur's and put it on a little piece of land that we own that's actually behind Wachovia Bank, adjacent to the parking lot. So the good news out of all of this is that I think we will recover 3 parking spaces that are currently essentially blocked by the dumpster enclosure behind MacArthur's. That is, there are 2 spaces blocked by the enclosure, and the 3rd space is mostly blocked by the activities there. So we'll give up 2 spaces to Metro North in an easement agreement. We'll get back 3 spaces over by the dumpster enclosure and end up with a much better dumpster enclosure that will be less visible and less problematic. In addition to that, at Metro North expense, they'll make that move, and they will also pour a new concrete pad and enclosure for our new dumpsters. At the moment, it'll be just moving the dumpsters that are there, but we're also setting ourselves up for the possibility of an electrically powered, sealed, compactor type dumpster, which would solve a bunch of problems we've had in that area, both with unauthorized dumping of stuff and the general foul conditions that exist back there. So hopefully we've achieved a whole bunch of things, including helping Metro North with the necessary infrastructure problem, but also gaining something on our own front. In addition to that, there's a modest contribution of $3,500 to the village coffers to underwrite our efforts and our lawyers' efforts in making that all work out. We had a work session last week. I just want to report on what we discussed. We've had an engineering review of the old rec center and talked a bit about that. It's a company called Miley Engineering. Kevin Miley had done a condition report on the rec center a couple of years ago for us when we first moved out of it and first started identifying some serious building problems. He came back with a report that indicated the building was basically sound. It had some maintenance problems. It has roof issues, window issues, some issues that are quite apparent from the outside. We have recently reissued a request for proposals for people who might wish to buy the rec center, and you can get that off our website at pleasantville-ny.gov. We wholeheartedly encourage anybody who might be interested in buying the rec center and using it for an appropriate use to take a look at that RFP, and if you happen to know of anyone who might be interested in such a thing, please forward that to them. The more people to see it, the better off we are. That request for proposals does not bind us to sell it, but it does outline a number of requirements for the proposals, including a commitment to restore the building to its historical condition on the outside. And our preference, as clearly stated, is that the building, any potential new private use of the building would need to be zoning compliant. It's currently in a 2-family zone. So it'll be, I think, August 15th, Patty, is the deadline for proposals. So as you may have read in the newspaper, we've had some interest already for various kinds of uses. We floated this request for proposals. We'll see what we get back from it, and then sometime after the August 15th deadline, we'll have to review what came back, see whether any of the proposals meet with our approval, and then either decide to go into negotiation with a potential buyer or alternatively decide not to sell it, in which case we'd have to consider what public use we might have for the building. In the meantime, Kevin Miley's report makes clear that we have to make some updates to the building, including restoring heat to it. As part of the venture to prepare it for sale, we removed an underground oil tank last, I guess about 9 months ago. And so at the moment, although it has a functioning furnace and heating system, there's no oil tank. So Kevin Miley's indicated that leaving it over the winter unheated is probably a bad idea, that it should be heated up at least to a 50-degree level or something about that level to avoid condensation and the like. So we'll be working our way through those questions. We had a discussion about restricting parking on the east side of Westgora Avenue and have posted a public hearing for that purpose. We had a number of neighbors who were concerned about commuter parking in their neighborhood causing problems for the neighbors. We discussed playground equipment that's under discussion for the Soldiers and Sailors Park, and we'll be working with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board on that front. Patty Dwyer stayed up till late at night working on a smart growth application for a grant from the state, which would allow us to get some money for a parking consultant to do a parking master plan and also to assess our current parking conditions. And then after having stayed up late to meet the deadline, turned out the deadline was extended.
For those that couldn't meet the deadline.
By 2 months.
Was that right? So
By 2 months, yeah.
it just goes to show that sometimes in life it's the good guy.
But we could do it.
What did Leo
Heidi
DeRocher
could do
say?
it.
All right. Something about the fat lady singing, I don't know.
No, that was Yogi. Did he say Yogi or Leo DeRocher?
Leo DeRocher was Nice Guys Finished Last.
Yeah, Nice Guys Finished Last,
Wasn't that
right.
the story?
Well, we're in, that's the good news.
Right.
We're in.
So at any rate, in work session tonight, before our public session, we had a meeting with Ron Longo, who's a labor attorney with Keene and Bean in White Plains, and he will be assisting us with our ongoing negotiations with the police regarding their contract. And after our regular meeting, we have a couple of items for discussion in work session after our regular meeting, and one of them is to discuss a bunch of zoning code issues that have been raised to us by the Planning Commission and by the Zoning Board of Appeals, so that we can establish a sort of a mechanism by which we're going to go forward and get those things decided upon one way or another. Another of the matters that we have on for discussion in work session is long-term capital planning for our refuse district. Which is a more complicated way of saying should we or should we not buy new garbage trucks. Our two existing garbage trucks are nearing the end of their lives. A new garbage truck costs something like $185,000 or $200,000. So we're looking at a nearly $400,000 expense to buy 2 new garbage trucks if we proceed in that direction. And so that clearly is an occasion where we're going to pull back a little bit and take a look at the question of whether the way we handle sanitation right now is the way we ought to handle it going forward, and if not, whether there are any changes we would want to make, including a change in the range of service, a change in the mechanism, including the possibility of outsourcing it in some way. None of these things arrive on the table with any preconceived notion. Indeed, I think our sanitation guys do a great job, but it is important for us to understand whether a $400,000 expense is appropriate at this point going forward, to make sure that we're doing the right thing in the right way. So that is a matter for discussion tonight, and also we're going to be talking later on in work session about crossing guard budgets and crossing guard posts. There have been a number of neighborhoods that have been interested in getting a crossing guard in their neighborhood for a post during the school year, and one of them that's been particularly a matter of concern has been the corner at Great Oak Lane and Manville Road, which is a difficult crosswalk area at that point. So we spent some time, as did the police chief and people from the schools, looking at the conditions at all the corners that currently have crossing guards, as well as at some of the corners, the Great Oak Lane and Manville one being one of them, to see whether in fact we could accommodate some of these needs by shifting people around from current posts, or whether we need to establish a new post or not. So that's a matter for discussion later on tonight as well. So as we work our way through that, we'll let you know what the upshot of it is in coming meetings. Again, if anybody has any comment at the moment on anything we've talked about, 769-1677, your comments are welcome. Any comments from the public?
What reference to?
Anything.
Anything? Did you want to say something, Mr. Riley? Welcome.
Question. This.
Could you just
my name is
state
Vincent
your name?
My name is Vincent Paiola. I couldn't hear too well. Either it's the mics or the speakers, something, or my ears. Could be either
Or
one.
all three.
Or all three, yes. But I don't know how it's coming across on TV.
Okay.
If they're understanding everything. I've heard certain words and certain words I haven't heard. Okay. My name is Vincent Paiola. I'm at 446 Manville Road, Pleasantville. I listened to the Conservation Advisory Council representative, and I think that the first thing on the agenda should be stormwater on Pleasantville Road and Manville. That should be the first thing, because that gives us, for years and years and years, it's given us a big problem, and I cringe every time we get a rainstorm. And I think many of the other people in that area also do the same thing. It's been something that we've talked about with Mr. Wire and the previous administration for years and years and years, when John St. Ledger was the administrator, and we had hopefully that they could do something about it, because that's been an ongoing problem. When they built the Sawmill River Parkway, there was nothing around here. There was no stormwater. So I guess the engineers figured that they didn't need much of an opening, you know, so they built something like this arc here, you know, and that was sufficient. Well, all they saw was a little stream about this high going through when they, you know, that's when they looked at it. But if they ever looked at the proper time, when there's a very, very heavy rainstorm, in a short period of time, that culvert is not sufficient to take the water. How it would affect further on down is another problem. That's not our concern right now. I think that should be somewhere else, because to do anything, you have to start from somewhere. What do you say? A stitch in time saves nine. Rome wasn't built in a day. You build one little thing at a time, and you go on from there, which at least would be something, would be an advantage, progress, whatever. Nothing. A lot of paperwork, and I talked to Mr. Wire frequently on the same thing, and we've heard, I know that she's gotten in touch with Corps of Engineers, which they're supposed to be involved, although being that the river also takes stormwater, then it should be the DOT and the state that should be involved in that. I don't see why it can't be at least somewhat minimal. No matter, you don't have to change the whole structure. You could put a small culvert, 24-inch, 36-inch on either side of the original culvert.
To get more water across the other side of the sawmill.
Just overflow.
Right.
When the water reaches the height, when the water reaches the height of the structure that is there now, it's just like a dam.
Right.
That the road being closed in, the water reaches the height of that culvert, and it's got no place to go except out.
Well,
So then we have the problem of water to homes, roads, then we have the traffic. It's another thing. Talk about air pollution, that has to be considered.
sure. I mean, no doubt when we have
And
flooding
the
in the
people
sawmill,
who live in the area, if they try to get out of their driveways or into their driveways, forget it. You know, they could wait an hour before they get in there somehow
Right.
at certain times. But the problem is that every time a rain starts, you wonder, is this going to be it? It's not right. Not
Well,
right.
here's what I can tell you.
Yeah.
I actually am meeting tomorrow with John Nona, former mayor and now county legislator,
Yeah,
and
John Nona.
and Bob Meehan, the supervisor, town of Mount Pleasant, to talk about a bunch of things, but one of them on the radar screen is flooding. There are some grants available through the county now for flood control issues, and in fact, a chunk of the money has already been handed out to Mamaroneck to deal with their harbor flooding problem.
When they
But-
getting any?
Well,
When they getting any?
they're still to be gotten, and we're in line and discussing it tomorrow morning to see whether Pleasantville and Mount Pleasant can sort of present a united front to see if we can get a piece of this. One of the things that has clearly come out of this year-long flood review that the county has done is that they have clearly articulated that the model for flood control has changed from what it was some years back, and that is to sort of get the water moving faster into the sawmill and faster down county, because what's happening is there's no place for it to go when
No.
it gets down county. So
Right.
as a result of that, they have put the stop on a whole bunch of sort of small-scale flood relief problems that might have addressed specific neighborhoods, but would have thrown more water into the sawmill at peak times. So the mantra of the day is to try to manage flood water as much as is possible in the areas where it's created in the manner that nature would have done it if none of this had all been built. Of course, that isn't the case, and indeed more development continues to go on. So I don't know what will come of it, but I can tell you that we'll be in line for getting some of this grant money and getting a focus on this through this county project. And I think the timing is as good as it has ever been, because the county has just finished, or is nearly finished, with a year-long project. I don't hold up much hope at all that the Department of Transportation or that the Army Corps of Engineers are going to be more than in the bus, certainly not in the driver's seat as far as I can see. And do you have any different sense of that, Patty?
Yeah, but see,
No,
Yeah.
it's
Mayor,
right on point.
excuse me, the Corps of Engineers, when they come, there's a trickle about that high in the river.
Yeah. And that's probably the only day
They're not seeing,
that's the
they're not
only day
seeing
they're
what the
willing to.
actual
Yeah. No, I know.
happens.
Look, I know
what
exactly.
The actual, you know,
Right.
I don't know how well they're good engineers, but the point is, they don't see it when it's at maximum.
You're completely right, although the sense I have is that when it's at maximum, everybody's at maximum, and releasing more water into the sawmill is not in the cards at the moment. So it may be that there's some way around this, and it seems to me that our best first bet would be to get some of this county money that is specifically focused for flood control and flood mitigation in specific regions. And with a joint venture by Mount Pleasant and Pleasantville together, I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to get somewhere with it. So I'll be able to tell you more a week from now.
What I have suggested is by putting a small culvert on either side of the culvert that there is.
No, I know, and you made that
That would-
suggestion. Remember, we had that big long meeting with everybody here, the Army Corps of Engineers and the county and this and the other thing.
It's not a lot of money.
No,
It's
I know it's not a lot of
and
money.
It doesn't close everything all at once like it would do on a major project.
Yeah. No, I
You know,
agree. It could easily be done. The question really is, it involves getting all the interested parties to agree that it's okay to put more water on that side of the sawmill, and that's sort of, I think, where we're stuck at the moment.
I've looked at it,
Right.
and I've spoken to Mr. Wire about that.
So,
But what do you do?
I don't know. Right.
Can you take? Are you going to get enough money to do the whole project all at once? You're not.
Probably.
They're not going to agree to something like that. If
Yeah.
you take it one thing at a time, one item at a time, and enough money to do that, and then you go on from there, next, right down the line. And each one will take a certain amount of money and a certain amount of work. But like everything else, it has to be done piecemeal. It cannot be the whole project.
No, I agree. Clearly it has to be done
That's what I've been
piecemeal.
suggesting. I say, you cannot, no matter how you try, you will never, in 1,000 years from now, I'll be dead and buried 1,000 years, there won't be any a project that large all at once. You've got to go one step at a time.
So, go ahead.
I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do on our own, isn't that correct? I mean, don't we need the...
We cannot
We
put
cannot
water
do
across the
anything.
sawmill.
Right.
They could
Absolutely.
help, the DOT
Right.
could help
We
and
know,
stuff
we
like
can't
that.
just do it.
Because the DOT has charge of stormwater
Right.
repairs and alterations.
Although-
DOT does.
What-
They
what
did
is
it up.
their view, though?
They did it up further. They did it above
In
Chappaqua.
Chappaqua, right.
They did that
Yeah.
up in
know, yeah, that-
where
they
else?
said they-
Somers,
they-
up around Somers.
Yeah.
They did the same thing. They did the projects up further, and they did them. They got the money. Somebody squawked. Somebody hollered high enough, or made enough of complaints.
I agree with you. I mean, certainly
get it done.
20 years ago, or maybe it was 30 years ago, in Chappaqua,
35 years ago,
all that work was done
in
in Chappaqua.
December, the end of November, beginning of December, they had a fire truck where Locasio's house is. His cellar was up to the first floor, and they had a pumper from the fire department pumping his cellar out.
Oh my gosh. Well, two things have happened since.
That was 1974 or 75, Mayor.
Two things have happened since the last big project that DOT did, and one is the state has gotten even more broke than it's always been. But the other thing that's happened is that everybody's position has hardened that little projects solving little problems that move the problem to somebody else's community are not the way to go. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I can tell you that I do feel as though the county has done what seems to be a pretty good faith planning exercise, and it looks to me more like a more realistic way to approach it. And so
neighborhood needs to get wiped out
we'll know.
before. I said your neighborhood needs to get wiped out before they even pay attention. I mean, why? I don't understand the flood money that the county's giving out, if that's the case. I mean, because it's good. Every community's got a problem, and it's a big problem that needs to be solved, not a bunch of little problems. And
Well, the problem is,
well, just a second. But so I just think that I wish you all the luck. I think you're going to be back here again, Mr.
In 20
Viola,
years.
in a year, giving us the same presentation that you've given us every year, year in and year out, explaining the problem, which I sympathize with, but we're somewhat powerless to do much about because it is a plethora of agencies that you have to get through in order to even get at that, and seemingly the landscape on how to solve it changes. We were promised, as part of just the Sawmill River Parkway, a comprehensive plan for moving traffic through Pleasantville. Something simple like that would be, organized by the county
The
police
simplest way, I think,
with signage and
is no
whatnot.
flooding.
Signs,
Is find someplace
there's
for
none
the
of
water to
it.
go.
So, I mean, I'm not very optimistic, period, about it, and I don't want to give you, that's
No.
my own opinion.
Right. Okay.
Again, neighborhoods need to get wiped out, and it has to be on the national news, like Mamaroneck, in order for somebody to pay attention.
We were on the news.
None of us want that.
We were on the news. They just...
Well, I know, and that's how we got the Sawmill River Parkway raised a little bit, but not that it solved the
Yeah.
problem.
Well,
saw
here's
some
what I
paperwork.
want to say. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't mean to suggest great optimism that we've found the answer to this, but what I will say is there are people out there working very seriously on it. The county has been working very seriously on it, and the Village of Pleasantville is going to be at the table, and indeed, we're going to be there tomorrow morning. So
Yeah.
we'll see what we can do,
Yeah,
and
okay.
we'll report. So we're
keep
really
your
working on
flood
it.
insurance up to date. That's the bottom line.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Just one suggestion on this, I don't know if this fellow here, if they're going to do anything with the CAC, making a path through the woods and the amount of water going through there. They're not putting wood chips ain't going to do a thing. They're going to wash away in no time. The first heavy rains, the wood chips are going to, and people who are riding a bike or walking or something, they're going to come to an obstruction. And I think that if possible, if they're going to make a walk, they should put rock first and kind of build a little culvert on the side of the path and then use wood chips or something similar, a smaller rock, a larger rock on the bottom of the path,
Yeah.
where they can get it from the DOT or someplace where they're breaking up rock or something that they're not using, and you put that down on the bottom first. That makes
So the
a
water can
very
get
good
through.
path. That makes
Well,
a very good
we-
path. And then put wood chips over that. That the wood chips will stay there then. The rocks will sort of drain the water out
Right.
without too much
Well,
problem.
that may be a direction. There are
Yeah.
5 or 6 areas that are wet, and then areas between that aren't wet. So
Yeah,
that
but
might
I
be a
mean, in
reasonable
those
way.
places especially, that's
Yeah. Okay, thank
as
you for your
large
advice.
as large stone as possible
Right.
first, and then go to medium stone or smaller stone, and then put wood chips, because wood chips is good in a high place, somewhere where
Right.
you have very good drainage or not much water. That's all right, but where you have water cascading through, you're going to have to be repairing these paths or having people using it to run on, and all of a sudden they're going to come to a large body of water.
Yeah. I mean, I think our
Me too.
goal, I think the CAC's goal is that it be a walking path, not so much something you could necessarily
Oh,
run
they-
on or
yeah.
whatever, but a naturalistic path through the woods. But clearly, your point is well taken.
Yeah,
So,
they should. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you, sir. one other thing I wanted to mention, and that is that the Croton Housing Network, which is an affordable housing group in Croton, has sent us a letter indicating that they are well along with constructing a building called Symphony Knoll, which will be including 11 affordable one-bedroom apartments for seniors. It's on Mount Airy Road in Croton, and they are now looking for applicants who may be interested in living there. The applications are due by Friday, July 31, and you can get them from the Croton Village office or by calling 914-271-3265, but they are apartments available to residents who are 55 or older with incomes that don't exceed 50% of the Westchester County median. For the smaller units, that would be $36,850 per year for one person, $42,100 for two, or for the larger units, which are 800 square feet, 60% of the average median income, which is $44,220 for one person, or $50,520 for two. So they're very anxious for anyone who might be interested to contact them, because the application deadline is Friday, July 31. Again, the Croton office, or 271-3265. So
It was pretty sweet.
it looks like a nice project. So with that, we will go to our resolutions.
209-138, looks like first one.
That's it.
Resolved that pre-check register dated July 6, 2009, covering check numbers 63822 to 63940 has been reviewed and is hereby approved with expenditures as listed below. General Fund, $158,409,000. Water Fund, $2,449. Capital Fund, $52,748. Refuse Fund, $1,029. Pool Fund, $1,630. Trust and Agency, $1,571, for a total of $217,838.82.
Is there a second?
Second.
Patty, I noticed another check to Caladri, which is the contractor building the bathroom and storage facility at
That's right.
Soaps and Sailors. Where do we stand on it?
I would say right now it is probably 80% complete. There is internal plumbing, wiring, and the like. The structure, for the most part, is up. It's, brick faced. You can see it.
Building looks great.
It's really
good.
nice.
Looks really good.
It's not as big
Fits
as
into
I
the
thought
park.
either.
I love it.
That last payment was probably over $50,000. That was for the brickwork,
Okay.
according to their schedule.
I saw they had the street open, so I assume they're putting in water and sewer connections
right.
to the building.
Right.
Great.
It's coming along.
Is that the project that knocked the power out of the village?
Oh, I don't think it did.
Or was it the tree pruning operations a couple days ago, last week?
Was it just a blip?
The old village went out for about 2
Yeah.
hours.
I don't know. I don't know what, we'd have a surge here too. I don't know what caused that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. I wonder if before we lose our audience by reading these resolutions, I see County Legislator Nona is here. Maybe we'll withhold the rest of these and pick them up later. John, if you wanted to give us a little update on the county, but one interesting thing that maybe you could touch on is Mr. Viola was here talking about flooding issues down at Manville Road, and I mentioned that we're meeting tomorrow with Bob Meehan and talked a little bit about the county flood mitigation project, so maybe you could...
No, not you, Mr.
No.
Viola. Mr.
John. Yeah,
No.
it's all right. John,
John's
I'm thinking
here.
John could respond to your thoughts, so...
So you just lucked out.
Our meeting's tomorrow night, so.
So, welcome. John Nona, our former mayor and our county legislator.
But Mr. Viola, you said the magic words and he appeared.
Genie out of the bottle.
That's good.
Well, let me start with flood control. Several years ago, maybe about 2 years ago, the county executive proposed a flood mitigation task force, a flood control task force, which was formed and which issued a report. And actually, Peter Eschweiler from Pleasantville is the chair. And we finally got him and the rest of the task force to come to one of our committee meetings, committee of the whole. It's not a formal board meeting, but all of the legislators are supposed to be there to talk about what they developed. And the interesting thing was they were all operating under the assumption that to have a flood control project, yet for the county to spend money, and the county executive allocated $50 million to flood control. That in order for the county to spend money for flood control, it had to have a county purpose. In other words, there had to be some county facility that would be affected by flooding. So 4 projects were proposed, all of which tried to come up with some theory that there was a county purpose. A county road was nearby, some county facility, a county sanitary sewer line. But then we've learned that there's a provision of the county law, Section 223, that says the county could spend money for flood control to protect public and private property. So there is no limit or restriction on what the county can spend money on for flood control. But the issue we're now facing is, how do you prioritize? It's like a free-for-all. Everybody wants to come in and get funding for flood control, and is it first come, first serve or not? So we're wrestling with trying to develop criteria. Obviously, one project that affects a great deal of the county, because it affects a number of municipalities, would be flood control for the Sawmill River. And would still affect probably Newcastle, Pleasantville, Mount Pleasant, Greenburg's. There's no question there are places in Greenburg affected by it. So we would like to, several of us who were in affected communities would like to start pushing for a major project for the Sawmill River. And we need to figure out what engineering has been done. You know, this has been on our agenda for many, many years with the Army Corps of Engineers and the State Department of Transportation. But if we could get the county behind this, but we need the municipalities involved as well to kind of push the project. This could really happen, you know, not overnight, not tomorrow. These things don't take, unfortunately, take too long to happen. But this is a project that we ought to push for our area. And that's why I think we ought to get Bob Meehan on board, and then the communities downstream from us that have flooding problems. But to me, the Sawmill River project is one of the best projects. Tarrytown is getting a project, and the 3 other projects are all over in the Sound Shore area that got hit with the flooding a while ago. And one of those projects is getting a lot of money through the federal government. It's kind of, the county's only putting in 10%, and the federal government is putting in 90%. So that's something we should look at as well. The other disappointing news I got recently is when I first got elected, I asked Nina Lowy to try to get some money appropriated for the Locust Woodland water distribution system. I found out that got cut from the appropriations bill. She proposed and she put it in, but it got cut. So what we now want to look at is another topic to discuss with the town supervisor is there are several state programs through the stimulus package for water distribution system upgrades under the Clean Water Act. So we're gathering information about that we'll pass on and provide any assistance that the county can to try to get some money, see whether those projects can go forward. Bob Meehan has had the engineering study redone, or was having it redone from several years ago, which I think had a $5 or $6 million price tag, and that's what Nita Lowy put in the bill. So that's another item I think we ought to try to push, because that's just a continuing disaster that will only get worse. And I know it's not technically our problem, but I think it kind of is our problem because we sell them the water. The town has to take the lead, but now's the time to try to get money because it's out there. And we probably need some help from Andrew Stewart-Cousins and Richard Brodsky to push that as well. I was going to touch on a couple other things. One is there's a strong interest in the county legislature to try to push revaluation countywide. It's a very controversial item. And we're trying to get the municipalities to buy in. Nobody wants to push this and impose it. So the first step is going to be kind of to create a database, both for residential housing, but even more importantly for commercial housing, so that any municipality can tap into this database for its commercial properties and have comparables to look at in determining a proper assessment. That's one item. You may have heard about a bill in Albany that to change the method of valuation of condos and co-ops.
I thought Albany was closed.
well, nothing's happening.
Can't-
Right, nothing's happening. Nothing's going to happen because it was proposed in the Assembly, and it's not going anywhere in the Senate. But you just should be aware of it. It was written in a way, normally if the state is going to pass a law that affects one county, they have to get a home rule message from that county saying, we like this, we approve it, please pass it. They didn't do that with this law because it was worded in a way that said it applied only to counties with a population greater than 940,000 and less than 960,000. Guess what? There's only one county that qualifies. And it had all the co-op and condo
What county?
association up in arms, the one we live in.
It is, okay.
The only one. Because it would help us, it would help municipalities,
Right.
because you're getting so many, every year you get certiorari's from condos and co-ops. That would require them to be valued as residential properties rather than commercial properties. And one of the criticisms of that is that senior citizens who live in co-ops and condos would be adversely affected because their taxes would go up, but maybe there's a way to provide them relief. If you have any interest in the Legacy project, I found out that there's another deal that's available if you have the money, and that is no strings attached. The county pays half, the village pays half. So no
For?
for a Legacy Field program. So you don't have to agree to
No
take
strings
county
attached,
roads.
meanings
No agreement. You don't have to take any county roads, and you don't have to agree to do any additional affordable housing. But it's
And
50/50.
does-
It's not.
Right.
Right. Does the county require use percentages?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to, since county money's going in, it would have to technically have some availability, but I think the school would satisfy that criteria.
Do they require county ownership during the life of the bond or county lease during the life of the bond?
If it's 50/50, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We have to.
All right. Well, so that's
I don't know
a
the
discussion
answer
we
to
should
that.
have.
And if the school use would satisfy the county use?
Right,
The school using it would satisfy it.
because they bring in teams
Teams
from
from
all over the
other,
county.
from all over the county,
Right.
right.
And finally, one other thing I wanted to mention is the consolidation statute that Albany passed. It's raised a big hullabaloo. I don't think it really means a lot at the end of the day.
No?
No. No.
I heard a lot about it at NICOM last
I
week,
mean,
and you and I
the
had this
Association of
discussion.
Towns and
Yeah.
NICOM is
Right.
all up in arms, but, you know, it may cause a headache in some places, but remember, for instance, if a group of people wanted to dissolve Pleasantville and merge it into Mount Pleasant, they would have to get a petition signed by 10% of the residents, not only of Pleasantville, which might be easy, because you just stand outside the
Right.
Super Key Foods and you say, sign this petition and your taxes will go down.
Right,
But
exactly.
you also have to get people in Mount Pleasant to do it, 10% of the population of Mount Pleasant. I don't know what they tell them. Maybe they tell them the same thing, but it's not so obvious. If someone in Mount Pleasant would agree to that, they don't know how it'll affect their taxes. And then even if it gets on the ballot, it has to pass by 51% of the people in both municipalities. And then, if it passes, then the two municipalities have to get together and put together a consolidation plan. And after the consolidation plan is put together, and there's a whole series of rules, if they don't agree, you go to court, and there's a mediator appointed. But let's assume they come up with a consolidation plan. At that point, 25% of the voters in either municipality can cause another referendum to vote down the consolidation. So it's a kind of cumbersome process.
Vote down the plan, the consolidation plan.
Yeah, and if it's voted down, then there can't be another
I
referendum.
mean, it has
for
to
4
be a
years.
vote at that point.
Well, first of all, there has to be a vote
The number of
on the
them.
idea of...
If the first 10%, isn't that just a...
If the 10% of the people, both municipalities, 10% of the voters in each municipality, can't be the same person in both, who happens to live in Pleasantville and Mount
It's a
Pleasant.
petition, isn't that what...
It's a petition.
Right.
It's like
But
California.
the second
like
number,
initiative
25%, is that a petition too? Is
Yeah.
that, or is that
Yeah,
actual?
that's a petition. But that's after it's passed by 51%.
Oh, I see.
It's kind of like a referendum on the referendum.
So it's very unlikely that
It's a
after all
long
of
and
that...
drawn-out and cumbersome process.
And who pays for the consolidation plan? Each municipality
Yeah.
pays for their,
Yeah,
which can be quite costly.
sure.
It's,
I'm sure you need consultants to figure out how you're going
How
to
to
put
do that,
together.
yeah.
it's the New York Council of Mayors.
So frankly, I don't think
purpose.
it's going to happen.
Right. I don't worry about it particularly. I mean, among other things, if there's evidence that we could be doing things better or saving money in a different way, we ought to look at it anyway. However, at least based on the evidence presented by NICOM in the context of some committees that have actually examined it or actually done it, the savings have typically not been realized. So,
I mean, there are some villages in parts of New York with 200 or 300 people. You know, and you have to question
Right.
why does a village of 200 to 300 people exist? What kind of services does it
Right.
provide, if any? Just probably only controls the land use within the geographical boundaries of the village.
Well, there is one right up here. What is the name of that one? It's got like 300 people, 4
There's a few on
employees,
Long
4 village
Island.
employees. Yeah, there's one the one on Long Island is over by Cold Spring on North
Right.
Shore. Yeah,
There's some very small ones
very
there.
small.
I don't know how big Buchanan is. Buchanan's the smallest one.
No,
in
there was
Westchester.
just one in the paper that they reported on. I forget the name of it. When they were reporting on all of the salaries, and there's 4 employees that basically wore all the house. They were the administrator, the clerk, everything. It's kind of very low budget.
You have any report on the county's financial condition? As I was mentioning, DiNapoli's comments
I
was...
emailed the budget director today and asked her for an update of where we stand with mortgage recording tax receipts and sales tax receipts, and I haven't gotten a response because I just emailed her this afternoon
Right.
in the hope that I'd have the information in the next week or two. That first 6 months, half a year,
Right.
should give us a pretty good picture.
Yeah.
But my sense is that it's not good news.
Worse than envisioned, do you think? Or?
I don't know, I asked her for
Yeah.
a comparison against budget, and when they budgeted the amounts, they knew that the economy was not in good shape, so they knew that the budget was supposed to be very conservative. So it would be interesting to see if it's off budget and how much it's off.
Well, as soon as you get those numbers, forward them on to me and to
It'll go right
Patty,
on.
that'd be great.
Yeah,
And then we'll pass them around.
right, so. Any
Hope
other-
they had as more foresight than Washington did. in
Yeah,
all
they were
that. Yeah.
supposedly very conservative, but who
Yeah.
knows, you know, whether they were conservative enough.
And do you have any hope that this logjam in Albany...
If they had a lieutenant governor, there wouldn't be a lot, unfortunately.
Are you volunteering?
Yeah, I was to say, should we put you up for that, John?
It's a mess. It really is a mess. You know what's held up is the sales tax.
Right.
Because that has to be renewed every 2 years. And why they can't agree to at least pass all those sales tax extenders for each county that requires it, and the city of New York, I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks
All right.
for
Thanks,
listening
John.
to me.
Thank you very much for coming by. Much appreciated. All right, we're
That's
back
me.
to our resolutions, number 139.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees has reviewed the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, June 22nd, 2009, and they are hereby approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, corrections?
I have a correction. My neighbor that came back from her 3rd tour of duty in Iraq is Teresa Sconzo, not Kathleen, pardon me. Teresa Sconzo. So I get to thank her again for 3 tours of duty and a Bronze Star and being a grandma and all of that. So very proud of her. That's my only.
All right,
Mhm.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Jonathan.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby accepts the following donations from the Shea Brothers Communications LLC, $1,000 to the Music Festival, and from Mr. and Mrs. Louis Canaris, $100 towards the senior program.
Is there a second?
Second?
Shea Communications has helped us with the music festival several years running, so thank you very much to them and to the Canarises. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Brian.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village treasurer to create a water and drainage project capital account entitled Hayes Hill Road and Green Meadow Road Area Project in the amount of $80,000 for engineering services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Patty, you want to describe this?
This just follows our discussion we had at our last meeting where the board engaged PCI to perform certain engineering design work for a project up at the Hayes Hill Green Meadow area. So we need to set a capital account in order to spend, that money for PCI.
But the cost of the services were not $80,000. That's just,
Well, they were
Isn't that right?
73,300, and we've already expended money to get to that point.
Right.
So when we
Okay.
added it all together, we're about 80,000
all right.
out right
I mean,
now.
the short version of a long story is that we have drainage issues on Hayes Hill that have been producing icing problems in the winter. And we are looking at a drainage and water main project that would involve crossing from Church Street along Green Meadow down to Hayes Hill, in addition to some broader area drainage problems that engage Summit Place across the St. Jude's property and down to Green Meadow as well as the Hayes Hill. So PCI, our engineers for this project, have some hope that we may get some of this money through a federal grant program, and we're required to get the project to a certain level of fit and finish in order to achieve that. So we're proposing to proceed.
Mr. Viola, we can do something about this water problem. Maybe not yours, but that we have some say in this one.
You
So-
can move to Hayes Hill,
Well,
we have a whole different problem.
We have a place to put this water, so.
Yeah.
The vast majority of that $80,000, though, is for the water main project, though. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. A little over, a little less than $500,000 for drainage, but the balance would be
So
water.
the $500,000 would be the construction project. We haven't agreed to build this yet. Clearly, we have the goal of building as much of it as we reasonably can, but in order to qualify for this grant, we need to get this piece of it designed. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the mayor to sign the New York State Smart Growth Grant application for a parking master plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
This was Patty's 3 in the morning effort, and then they extended the deadline.
And you did a great job on it, Patty.
Thank
It really
you.
was very well done.
Thank you. Well, I think we have an opportunity here, so
Yeah.
we're in the game.
I think you hit on all the points
Yeah.
that they required, and
But the thrust of this is we're asking for about $2,650 for a project that would allow us to hire a parking consultant. And we have a detailed proposal from a company that was recommended from several places, including from Metro North, to help us put a much better quantitative analysis behind our analysis of our parking needs and our parking supply, and also provide some best practices advice from a professional about parking management and about long-term parking development. So the deadline for submissions has been extended by quite a bit, and so I guess so will the word about whether we get it.
Well, that's part of the problem.
right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village clerk to notice a public hearing for Monday, July 20th, 2009 at 8 p.m. prevailing time to hear comments as it pertains to amending Chapter 173, Vehicles and Traffic, Section 173-63, Schedule 15, parking prohibited certain hours as follows: to add Westcora Avenue, the east side, hours 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. from Manville Road to Spring Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
This will be a hearing to discuss the proposal to limit hours from 10 to 11 on Westcora, simply in response to concerns by the neighbors. In most of the residential streets near the train station, we have a similar kind of regulation in order to avoid having those neighborhoods turn into parking lots for out-of-town commuters. And it has become a problem on Westcora by the reports of the neighbors, and therefore we have posted this public hearing, and anyone with an opinion one way or another is invited on Monday the 20th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Jonathan.
Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville passed a resolution on August 25th, 2008, authorizing the village clerk to notice a public hearing for September 8th, 2008, entitling the local law amendment Chapter 185 zoning, Section 185-3 definitions and word use, Section 185-19 central business A1 district, and whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville voted to continue the public hearing at each of the following meetings: October 20th, 2008, November 10th, 2008, December 8th, 2008, January 26th, 2009, February 23rd, 2009, April 2009, and May 19th, 2009. And whereas on May 19th, 2009, the board voted again, to continue the public hearing on July 27th, 2009, whereas the board has changed the regular meeting schedule for July and will not be meeting on July 27th, 2009, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village clerk to notice a public hearing regarding local law amending Chapter 185 zoning, Section 185-3 definitions and word use, Section 185-19 central business A1 district for Monday, September 14, 2009, 8 p.m. prevailing time 80 Wheeler Avenue, Pleasantville, New York.
Geez, you gotta go through all that to change the date.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Okay.
It's almost not worth changing our schedule.
I know. Put it back.
It's too hard to change our schedule. Televised meeting the 20th, correct. This month it's this.
Till September.
September
Do you want us to read it again, Shane? So
September.
Jonathan would
September
be,
14, 2009.
Jonathan would be
September
happy
14,
to read the whole thing
2009.
again.
No, I wouldn't. 8 p.m.
Do you want to know what sections and codes and? Oh, okay.
All in favor? Aye. Vote aye. Aye. Motion approved. Budget amendments.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby approves the following budget amendments. We're taking $5,000 from unallocated insurance, putting it into MTA tax. $500 from contingency goes to MTA tax. $500 from unallocated insurance to MTA tax, and $50 from unallocated insurance goes to MTA tax, whatever that is, for a total of $6,050.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is this, Patty, the new MTA payroll tax?
This is the new MTA payroll tax imposed upon municipalities to help balance the MTA's budget. It represents 3/4% of our payroll. This budget amendment only covers us retro to March 1st.
Oh, boy. So can we tax them to balance our budget
To close our
next
fiscal
year?
year.
Next May?
So this is for the previous fiscal year.
That's right.
Oh, boy.
All in favor?
I'm not sure we're in favor
I have no
of this
idea how they have the authority to do that.
All with no choice.
Yeah.
We vote no, what happens?
Well,
Then
you
we-
should be on the MTA board because you're being taxed and you have no representation. I don't. I just
Taxation
don't know
without
how this can happen.
representation.
I mean, how can we
Didn't
vote
we do
yes
that
for this?
already?
You have no choice.
It's a legal
It's a law.
obligation.
The state Senate, when they were in session.
So even if we vote no, it gets done? Anyway?
Well, it's just
Our
reallocating
controller-
our
Our
money.
controller has to encumber this
We're taking it out of
money.
contingency.
We're taking it,
Piece
yeah,
of it. We
somewhere.
have to pay it.
What you're doing now is moving the money.
Right.
It has to be paid.
So when you say it's it's retroactive?
The payroll
Right,
tax.
We're not voting on whether or not to pay it or not.
That's
We're
right.
just-
Moving the money.
Voting on where to
We're
get
doing
it.
the deck chairs on the
That's
Titanic
right.
here.
That's,
Okay.
there you
We're
have
just
it.
helping Mary.
I like
You are
that.
dark tonight, Jonathan.
It's 1,000 degrees in here. How could you
All
not
right.
be dark?
All in favor? Aye.
I with regret.
Yeah.
So.
Do I have to?
Well,
Any more
we
business?
have to pay it.
It's about $3,000 a month on current payroll.
You're welcome to abstain if
that
you
right?
feel better.
It's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Move it.
All right. Motion approved. The grim circumstance. We're forced to pay it. We've got to find a way to do it. Steve?
Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby authorizes the village administrator to sign the agreement with Chase Bank for credit card services as per the terms set forth in their agreement dated July 6, 2009.
Is there a second?
Second.
Patty,
Does
you
it come down to this?
want to describe
We're
it?
taking credit card
Well, we have
coupons.
them. No, we do have them.
Do you want to describe this, Patty?
I will. I'll give it a shot. I know our treasurer did a lot of research into this product from Chase Commercial Card Classic accounts. J.P. Morgan Chase has developed a new program for municipalities. It's called the Commercial Card Classic Program. And our treasurer says that some of the advantages of the program, as opposed to traditional credit cards, include that they establish high-risk merchant category codes, which allows the village treasurer to prevent the card from being accepted for specified categories of transactions. In other words, you can't cash advance on it if you want to limit that. You can't have certain purchases, like jewelry and other inappropriate things on a credit card. They will never appear. They'll never be authorized. It also allows flexibility to adjust the limit per card. which is valuable to keep the limit low, because our current cards, just like some of the cards you may hold, we may get a letter in the mail saying, congratulations, your limit has just been raised to $50,000, or we don't need a $50,000 credit limit. We need a few $1,000s for conferences or for supplies and parks and recreation. Mostly their types of activities when they have to prepay for tickets and the like. And also for the seniors who use a credit card daily for some of their shopping at ShopRite. So annual fees and monthly fees for online reporting are also waived. So it's not much different than what we do now. We do have several credit cards in use. This, we believe, is going to give us more control over the accounts.
And who looks at these accounts?
You mean the detail on the statement?
Yeah, you actually look and make sure that these are monitored.
There are 3 people that do that.
And this is for 10 cards. Do we have 10 cards out there right now in the village?
We don't. We have, I believe we have 3.
And are we going to use 10 now?
We will, well, I don't think we need to. I think we'll just keep them. And when people need them, they will, have to sign them out.
It says the agreement obligates
Yeah.
us to designate at least 10.
Right.
We don't have to use them, we just have to get
No,
them.
right.
Okay. I mean, the advantage to it, as Mary points out, is that you can assign a general ledger code to a specific card, and then those charges then come back
Right.
sorted by the general ledger code, which would be clearly an advantage.
Which would be a lot
So-
easier to read. Right.
All right, and then I noticed that the memo from Joel Sachs notes that if we enroll in the Master Coverage Liability Program, protects the village from employee misuse up to $100,000 per card holder. Are we going to enroll in that? Is there an additional cost for that? That's on page 2, number 5 of the Sachs memo.
I don't know that. I'll try to get that information, but we do have
Well,
we have insurance
I mean,
coverage anyway.
So as far as I'm concerned, I mean, you can use your judgment on that. In essence, we're not putting cards in the hands of people that don't already have them. We're just doing it in a way that
That's right.
is easier to manage and I think more transparent.
That's exactly true.
And we can use the awards points to travel.
Yes, there you go.
Up to Hayes Hill and Green Meadow,
Yeah.
down to Manville. Okay, all in
Yes.
favor?
Aye. Can we put-
PCI take awards points?
I have one question with regard to the minutes, and we had a long discussion. It didn't really affect the decision on the village's insurance policy, but in reviewing it, what had come to light was that we have 59, now 58 vehicles on the policy, and I'd raised the question, why do we have so many vehicles on the policy? I know Judy had begun doing some work on that, and I think we really need to focus on that issue. I think that anybody who hears that somehow the village has 58 vehicles is astonished. I've mentioned it to a few people, and they just can't figure out where they all are, what they're all used
Well, not
for.
justifying, Steve, but there were a few trailers, for example.
Mhm.
I went through it after you sent that email around. So there are some things that,
So,
there are some vehicles that actually aren't vehicles.
Right.
But you're right, we're
Yeah.
oversubscribed and.
Well, I agree. I mean, I'm all in favor of looking at that.
Looking at
yeah,
Definitely.
I think we should continue to look at that, and there are a couple of components to it that have come up at other meetings that are relevant and important, but not mentioned in context with this particular issue that came to fore. And one was the number of vehicles we have, which may not currently be energy efficient by any stretch of the imagination. Secondly, number of vehicles we may have which may be older. And thirdly, because they're older, the amount of repairs we may be having on some of the vehicles that we have. And it seems that, particularly given the mood of the country, if you will, but for good reason with regard to the energy situation that we're currently facing, and interestingly, what the federal government is offering is trade-ins for vehicles that are energy hogs, for lack of a better term. It seems that it would be an interesting exercise to try and identify the redundancies in the village fleet, to eliminate as many of those as is possible, and to use, if there's any cash from that, from those transactions, some of that to turn in even more vehicles for more energy efficient, newer, and less repair prone vehicles. And I could see from the list of vehicles, certainly a number of them are unquestionably of need. Certainly, as we were just discussing earlier, there are two, the dump trucks, which are on a review agenda all their own. But when you look at the skew of vehicles, from real work vehicles, dump trucks and backhoes and that sort of thing, to some of the other vehicles, it certainly raises a question if the village's fleet has been carefully monitored over the years, and if maybe we have more redundancy than we need. And that's an ongoing expense in insurance, and it's certainly an ongoing expense in repairs. And I think it's something that's important enough that we not lose sight of and keep focused on.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And Mayor Nona, ex-Mayor Nona, former Mayor Nona is in the audience. I think you were the mayor. We were talking at one point about the police car situation years ago, and thinking about maybe it's time to think about other options for police cars. And I still maintain that mile per mile, cost per mile, we could do better, or we should be able to do better. We should, the next time we have to go out for a police car, we should look at more efficient cars, maybe smaller cars for our 1.7 square mile village. Let's get creative here.
Well, I can tell you that Chief and I had an exchange, as did Patty, a few weeks ago. New York City has bought, I think, 150 hybrid Nissan Altimas, as 100 of them will be marked cars.
Is that
and
right?
So the chief was in agreement that if it works for, he's back there. I think he put it that if it works for the big job, it would work for this one.
Right.
What about scooters?
Exactly.
So at any rate, I agree. Thank you for that, Steve. I just wrote it down. I think could devote a work session to that issue at some point in the future, in the near future. So, anybody else have anything else to raise? Let me remind everybody. I had one more thing I wanted to say, and that was thanks an awful lot to the to the Department of Public Works. Those of you who live over on Douglas Drive and Sampson are aware that last week we had a very, very substantial water main break, and those are moments when you realize the good work that people at Department of Public Works do. They get a call at 4 in the morning that the Millwood water treatment plant is noticing an unusual demand for water in Pleasantville, which almost certainly means a water main break, and our crew are out there with spotlights and flashlights driving around the village looking for the location of a water main break. It turned out that it was on Douglas Drive and had actually undermined a piece of the road by the time they got to it. So they were at it all day making the repairs and are working on repairs for the road. So thanks an awful lot to Steve Johnson and the entire crew of the Water Department and Department of Public Works. When we're sleeping at 4 in the morning, they're out there hunting for a water main break and successful in fixing it. So.
But you know what was so strange about that is that we were all just at the Millwood water treatment plant, and we were in their control room looking at the computers of our water tanks, and one of us had asked, what happens, when do you get the indication that something is wrong? What do you do? And he said, well, if we see the levels in this tank right here, and it's on the screen, it's a little tank, and it's got water in it, and if we see these levels drop, we'll call Steve Johnson whenever those tanks drop. And that's exactly what happened. They saw them drop rapidly, and they immediately called Steve. So. And
then in the end, Steve and his crew make an assessment about where the likely break might be based on how fast the water is going down, and therefore how big the water pipe is likely to be, and they start in a sort of process of reducing the options to try to find a location. So it's impressive detective work going on in the middle of the night when we're all sleeping. So thanks an awful lot to those guys. And then just to remind you one more time, this Saturday, July 11, is the 5th Annual Music Festival. You can buy tickets at the bookstore and a number of other places. PleasantvilleMusicFestival.com is a good place for information, but show up and buy your ticket on site if you don't have one. Gates open at 11. Music begins at noon. It runs till 8 p.m. A great day for people of all ages. So Saturday, July 11. Thank you all for watching. We will see you again at our next regular meeting, which is Monday, July 20. Motion to adjourn?
So.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. See you in a couple of weeks.